Thank you very much, and thank you very much to CEDA for the invite here today. I also want to start by acknowledging that we are on beautiful Larrakia country and acknowledge elders both past, present and future. And I also feel like I've got to say, I think it's going to be the first and only time that I follow the senior economist from the Commonwealth Bank in some kind of presentation. It's not intimidating at all. NTCOS has long recognised the significant economic and social benefits that not-for-profit sector contributes to the Northern Territory. Not-for-profit organisations exist right across the Territory, in our major centres, in our rural towns and in the most remote regions right across the Territory. And they provide valuable services that target vulnerable and disadvantaged people right across the Territory. They play a major role in building cohesion and maintaining community cohesion, providing opportunities for engagement and relationship building right across the Territory. But the real impact of the Northern Territory economy of the not-for-profit sector hasn't always been understood. And I think sometimes there's sort of a mythical view that you put money, government provides some funding to a not-for-profit and it just sort of disappears and is never seen again. In 2017, NTCOS partnered with the University of Western Australia to release the Value of the Sector report that attempted to quantify both the social and economic value of the not-for-profit sector here in the Territory. And the figures make it quite clear that there is a great economic value to this sector, with wider benefit to the Northern Territory economy. The report actually only tells, I guess, a small part of the story, and in which is a small snapshot in time of the Territory, and we look forward to developing that further. But what we did find was that there is over 450 registered charities and not-for-profits in the Territory. 68% are characterised as small to medium, while 51% have an annual income of less than $250,000. Over 7,500 people are employed in the not-for-profit sector, and that figure doesn't include casual staff, and some of the sectors that we work with, such as the disability sector, are a highly casualised workforce. So we would say that that's a very conservative estimate of 7,500 people. That 7,500 people is 8% of the Northern Territory workforce, and in fact is more than manufacturing and mining combined. The total amount of income of NT charities is $952 million. Just under half of that income is sourced from government grants, and the rest is actually made up of self-generated funding, donations, bequests, that sort of thing. 417 million of paid employee expenses is fed back into the Northern Territory economy, and we often talk about our sector as a sector that employs people who live where they're working. We rarely use fly-in, fly-out sort of models, and so people are actually spending where they're working, you know, whether that be in that remote community in a rural town such as Katherine or Tennant Creek or here in Darwin. And I guess one other sort of interesting fact is the value of the unpaid work that happens from our sector. So nearly 70% of all of those not-for-profits actually have unpaid volunteers working for them. So whilst you might say there isn't necessarily a huge amount of money rolling through some of these organisations, the contribution that they make both economically and socially is undeniable. We are unique in the Northern Territory. In our small cities and towns, it is much harder for NGOs and the private sector, small businesses, to be separate from each other and from the community itself. The ever-changing world and inescapable forces of globalisation clearly tell us that a collective impact, that is a structured approach where we all, as the sector, private businesses, government, work together through a shared value, is an effective way to make positive and social and economic change. And in this globalised world, it is unrealistic for our different sectors to work without each other. In the frontline service division, we cannot address social issues in isolation. Housing, homelessness, poverty, unemployment, domestic and family violence, alcohol, education, child protection, they're all intrinsically linked. To fix one area, others must be equally considered, and these issues affect all of our sectors, no matter where we work. So to achieve socio-economic development at the larger community-wide scale, we must partner, collaborate and share, as corporate citizens, as not-for-profits, as members of the community in which we live. A cohesive, healthy society is good for the economy, and so too are the not-for-profits that work to achieve this. And by combining the resources of the private sector, government and the expertise of the not-for-profit sector, there is enormous potential to achieve change. And this is a time when we have the opportunity to create real, long-lasting change in the Northern Territory. We have commitments from this government to implement reforms in areas such as reducing alcohol harm and protecting our children. And this is where we can have the greatest impact of all. And that means whether we work in business, whether we work in the not-for-profit sector or work in government, we're members of this community, and the success in order to achieve those reforms depends on the support of all of us in this room. Thank you.